Okay, let's make okay, let us make a quick custom keyboard app for Android. So this is assuming you have Android Studio installed and set up. As you can see, I have some older projects here, but let's jump right into it, and we're gonna start from a new project level. So I'm gonna do an empty activity because we don't really need much UI to start off with. So just the empty activity template here. Next, let's name this iOS keyboard clone. Okay, don't sue me, Apple. Gonna have language Kotlin, this stuff, just leave it as it is. If you want to save it in another location, then you can go and save it with this button and pick whatever you want. So I'm just going to save it in the default location, minimum SDK. This is where you select the lowest API level that your app will work for. So I'm going to do Android 5.0 Lollipop. And I'm going to not select this so that we can use the newer Android X libraries. It wants me to use uppercase. Finish. So this is going to set up the app now. I'm going to fit this into our window. And let that set up. Okay, so we're set up now, and I'm just going to go ahead and say now that I'm following a tutorial by Android Authority. I will link that in the description. This is the first time I've seen this tutorial, but I'm just going to follow it and see where it takes us. So if this is your first Android project, a few basic things. Of course, when you do the startup with the empty activity template, this is what comes up. This is the first two files that you see, which are the layout. It just says hello world, and the main activity Kotlin file, which all it does is set the view to that layout. Let's discuss the structure here a little bit. So on the side you see the project bar. Up here you'll see a toggle. You can switch between a number of views that Android Studio offers you. The most popular ones that I've used are Project and Android. Now what Project is basically it's a raw view of your project's directory structure. So you'll see all the Gradle files out here. You'll see there's an app folder, src, and you're basically navigating down the literal project structure with all of the folders here. So we'll discuss these in a bit, but that's the project view. The Android view, on the other hand, is sort of an intelligent view that presents things to you in an Android-y way. So we have our Gradle scripts, which, by the way, Gradle is how you do dependency management and project variables, stuff like that. That's what you do in these two Gradle files. That's too complicated for this lesson, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. The res folder is basically, res stands for resources. So this is where you have your static views, you have your layouts, you have your image resources, you have your string resources, which this helps for internationalization, sort of like a string name. Let's say hello world. This would say hello world, and the translator would come in and say the Spanish version of Hello World, he would define it in a different file with all the other Spanish string resources, and it would say hola world. Oh, I don't know the word. Sorry, I should have looked that up. So that's your resources folder. You have also your layouts here. You have MIP maps, which are kind of launcher specific resources. These are just the basic resources that Android creates for you when creating an empty activity. So that's that. And then you have your Java folder, which is your code. So res is where you'll have views, resources, assets, colors, strings, all of that stuff, static. And Java folder is where you have your code. And as you can see here, the Android view is presenting an Android test and a test. So this is an instrumented test folder here, and this is a unit test folder here. So this would run on the JVM, right? These tests, and these tests would run on an Android device. And finally, you have your main package, right? And here you can create new Java classes, Kotlin classes. You can create new packages. This is your code area. And finally, you have a manifest view. So again, as you can see, this is different from the project view. So that's a brief introduction to the folder structure here. And now let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial. So it says the first thing we need to do is create a layout file named KeyboardView.xml. So a few rules about your resource files. You want to follow this lowercase only, no camel case, no whatever the other cases are called. This is lowercase with underscores as spaces. So we're going to follow that rule when we make this new resource file. So you right click on layout here. You go to new and you select new layout resource file. Okay. Now a few things you see here. Let's first paste over the name of the layout file, right? keyboard_view.xml, all lowercase. And here you can see that it allows you to define where you're placing this resource. So you can have different build environments set up, and this in this case we only have main, debug, and release are the three build environments, and we can place this new resource in any of them. And in fact, if we make one right now called KeyboardView in main, and we make another one later called KeyboardView and put it in debug, then what's going to happen is, depending on which configuration you're running, that file is going to take precedent, or is going to be used. This just allows you to define different layout files, asset, drawables, resources, strings, whatever, depending on build configuration. So that adds some configurability. Directory name, you don't really want to change this. Let's just leave it as layout. And a brief explanation about what these are. So basically these allow you to say that you are making this resource specifically, say you're doing this say you're making this for portrait, right? If you want a different view for a portrait versus a landscape, versus you'll see square over here, I believe this for tablets. This, when you are adding a file, this allows you to add a keyboard view for portrait, and then later we can make one called keyboard view for landscape, and when we are in portrait, it's going to use a portrait keyboard view, and when we are in landscape, it's going to use the landscape portrait view. And as you can see, because I have this as portrait here, it is it has deduced that the directory name should be layout port. And that's why I said we don't really want to change that, because Android knows these names and these name layouts. So that's what that section is about, these qualifiers. So you can add as many as you want. Say we're doing a portrait orientation. Okay, and we're doing a night mode of that. So as you can see, we're kind of stacking orientations here, and this allows us to say this is the view for portrait and not night versus, you know, portrait in night, landscape not night, landscape night. And for each of those, Android Studio knows what Android is going to look for as far as a directory name goes, and it's going to append it accordingly. Yeah, there you go. That's the qualifier stuff, and it's not going to really come in handy here, but I just thought it would be a nice little quick tutorial on qualifiers. Okay, back to this tutorial by Android Authority. So it says that we need to make this a keyboard view. If you have custom views that you have defined, then it'll present those too. There's none in this project, so it's just presenting native Android components. So when I type key, it suggests keyboard view. I'm just going to hit enter, and that's going to fill that out, and we'll hit OK, and it's going to go ahead and create a keyboard view, or a layout with a keyboard view as the root element. So in this layout view, up here we have 3 different options. We can do split, which will present both the design and the code. We can do code, which does just the code, or we can do design, which presents just design and allows you to do kind of a drag and drop thing. So which one you want to use just depends on the use case. In this case, I'm just going to put split so we can see stuff changing as that happens. So I'm going to paste the code over so we can stop dilly-dallying, and then I'll explain what's going on over here. Primary, maybe. Okay. So you saw that was red underline, and that's probably because we don't actually have anything defined here in colors. So when you say add color, it's referring to color resources, and the only ones we have defined are pretty specific. So I mean, we could just say, you know, white. So if we put white over here, that's not red underline because that's actually defined. Okay, this is wrong in the first of all, that this capital L would never happen. It would be at small l, right? And that's just the tutorial being wrong on the Android Authority side, which is fine. Initially I see here that the key preview file has not actually been defined, as in we haven't created key preview, so it doesn't know what key preview is. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, so now as you can see, this is an at layout, which means we're creating a new layout file. That's referring to a layout when it says at layout. So we'll make a new layout resource file. We will name it key preview, right? So initially, now when you go back here, it's like, oh, now I know what's happening, right? Okay, key preview, and we have some code to put in here. I've just copied and pasted code over. So it looks like it really wants us to do this color primary and color primary dark stuff. So Let's go ahead and undo this, make it back to color primary, make this, correct this, okay. So this is red underlined, this is also red underlined because we don't have those definitions yet, so I'm going to go ahead and define them right here. For the purposes of this tutorial, just going to rename this to color primary. I'm going to rename this to color primary dark. And now when we go back, it's like, oh, I know what you're talking about. So we'll just move on and pretend like that doesn't exist. Hey. So actually, let's break this down. This key preview looks to be the actual view of a key on the keyboard. So as it's set up right now, we would basically, I think, have purple keys because that's the background. Actually, this looks wrong. Let's do that and color primary dark. Okay. So I switched that up. Basically, you saw the background, I'm going to set to the light color. The foreground, aka the text color, is going to be color primary dark. So this would be a purple key with a darker purple text on top. Text alignment is center. So this would center the text within the key. And this sets a text size of 30 SP. SP is a notation for scalable pixel, I believe. So anytime you're dealing with text sizing, you want to use SP because when the user goes into the Android settings and changes the font size, then SP scales with that setting of font size on the system level. DP is density independent pixels, which do not scale with font size. That's more for your images and stuff like that you want to be a specific size. You want to do those in DP. Text you want to do in SP, and we'll just leave these as they are. Match parent, because this essentially this allows the key to take up all the space that it's given that it's a keyboard view. And this is the first time I've made a custom keyboard. I'm assuming the system lays it out for you and you just have to define how the key looks within the layout that the system sets up for you. That's my assumption right now. Let's just move forward. So now we're going to make a XML file called method.xml. The tutorial doesn't mention where the file is supposed to go. Okay, so this was not made clear by the tutorial, but let's go ahead and make this input method file, which actually needs to go into the XML folder, apparently. So what we're going to do is go over here to res, right click all the way up there. I'm going to say I want a new Android resource file, and I'm going to say the resource type is XML, right? So this is going to create a new folder called XML for us because we don't have one yet. The root element is going to be input method, and the file is going to be named method.xml. So now that's been created, and I'm going back to the tutorial. I see there's a subtype tag inside. I'm just going to paste that in there. So now we have our method.xml file. You can also put information such as language in here later on. Okay, so now we are going to create the layout for the keyboard, apparently. So now in XML, we're going to create a file called keys layout.xml. Now that we have this XML folder, we can just right click over there, add a new XML resource file, call it keys_layout.xml. Pay attention again, we're underscore lowercase. Root element seems to be keyboard. From the tutorial, you saw the autofill take over for me. And this is what we'll be populating with keys and their behaviors. So there's a long XML here that I'm just going to copy paste, and then we'll discuss what is in there. So, alright. So what I've done is I've copy pasted the keyboard XML over. First thing you'll notice there's a red underline there because we haven't defined a color accent. Key text color, key background, key text color. Okay, cool. Let's go back to colors, change one of these to, actually let's go ahead and make a new color so I can show you this little trick here. So we want to make color accent, and what we can do is refer to another color in there. So this is just referring to black. Color accent now is black. Alright, now we come back here, the red underline is gone. Looks like we're gonna have key text color is black and key background is color primary dark. And once we get inside the keyboard tag, we have rows, and each row, it refers to the label here, right, and within each row we have these special keys with some information, codes, which looks to be a Unicode number representation, or integer representation of these, and we have the actual label of the key. And we have over here, there's a row edge flags, which I guess it allows us to put this row at certain gravities relative to the whole keyboard. I'm sure that's a thing. Nope. Maybe top. Oh, it's only top or bottom. Let's see. Unless it's left or, yep, top or bottom. So bottom it is. Maybe because it's not a column or something. Whatever. So we can set this to top or bottom. We've set it to bottom, and we're saying that we want the comma, space, slash, and done keys at the bottom. If you place more than one code separated by commas, your keys will scroll through those options if the user double or triple taps. That way we can make a keyboard that works like the old T9 number pad keyboards. Okay. So you could do something to the effect of, 46 and 44 over here, which if you see 44, that's a comma, so if they quickly tap this key twice, then it would make a comma instead, right? And then we could set the label to something like that. That's the idea with the codes. Negative codes represent constants in the keyboard class. -5 is the equivalent of delete. -1, as you can see, was over here. That's caps. -4 is dismiss, looks like. And these are just something we'll have to check in the reference to figure out what exactly each negative constant does. And this allows you to, of course, place these special keys wherever you want to in the keyboard. Now let's move on to actually making some code. And what that entails is we're going to make a new Kotlin class here. It's going to be a class. I'm going to name it my input method service. Okay. this is going to inherit from input method service. Input method service. As such, so this is a class inside the Android SDK. Hint, you can do command click or control click on Windows to go into the source code, or in fact to just navigate within your own source code. Okay, so actually we're going to implement on keyboard action listener, which looks to be deprecated. That's great. Let's see what it says here. Looks like there's a new way to do this, but we're going to implement this tutorial, so it's just going to be the deprecated way. That's fine. Alright, so we're implementing on keyboard action listener. We're subclassing input method service. So let's go ahead and see over here. So if you hover here, it's going to offer some actions such as implement members, right? So that's one way you can do it, or you can do the control N thing and implement methods here. And this is going to show all the methods that are within the OnKeyboardActionListener interface, and we're just going to go ahead and Command A, select all of them, and that's going to stub out all the methods in the OnKeyboardActionListener interface. And we also need to override onCreateInputView. So again, there's two ways to do that. Either you can go from here and override and try to find it, which there's a lot of methods here. But another easier way to do it in certain cases, this being one of them, is to actually just go into the code and start typing. And so I'm going to do onCreateInputView. So it presents that as something that we can override from the input method service, and it'll return a stub implementation, which is just doing the implementation in the superclass. Cool. And over here, we're going to create a few properties, right? So this tutorial is in Java, so I'm going to copy, paste, and as you can see, it says clipboard content seems to be Java code. Do you want to convert it to Kotlin? And I'm going to say yes to that because I'm lazy. And it has created these properties for us. But there's something wrong here, being that we want to actually modify these later. So I'm going to make these bars. This is a Kotlin thing. Val is a final variable. Var is a mutable variable, right? And that's going to make those. And we're going to now override the onCreateInputView method. So I just went over here, I copied the view or the Java code. I'm gonna come back here, paste it, and as you can see again, it's like this is Java code, you want to convert it to Kotlin. So obviously, as you saw earlier, the conversion isn't perfect. You often have to do something to make it exactly what you want it to be, but it gets you started and really reduces the load for you. There's some red underlines because this is actually keys layout, right? So what you actually want to import is our keyboard view. Okay. All right, there we go. So now we're set up over here. So this is, let's discuss this code. Keyboard view is this property here, which is a keyboard view, and all of this is deprecated because we're following an old tutorial, but whatever. This is just inflating keyboard view and casting it into a keyboard view, which it is, right? If we go back to keyboard view over here, the root method is a keyboard view. That means that this layout is a keyboard view, and we can safely cast it as such. The next line is creating a keyboard object using the keys layout. Then we're going to set the keyboard property of this keyboard view as the keyboard that has been initiated using our keys layout, which as a reminder is this thing, right? Come back over here. There's a set on keyboard action listener. When an action happens on the keyboard, we want to set that object to this, which this of course has implemented the OnKeyboard action listener, but you could also provide an actual implementation here or any other implementation, or you could do an anonymous implementation over here as such, right? And define them all in there. All options that you can take. In this case, we have just implemented the OnKeyboard action listener on the class, so we'll just say that that's the OnKeyboard action listener of this keyboard view. And over here, you can see that SmartCasted keyboard, this is an error in Kotlin because keyboard view is mutable that could have been changed by this time. And keyboard view is a nullable property. In Kotlin, you need to specify that this, as a developer, I'm expecting this not to be null. Or I can provide some other known, immutable implementation. But in this case, I'm going to say that keyboard view is not going to be null. And the way to say that is to do the double exclamation points, because we've just kind of defined everything over here. The other important method is the one handling key presses. So that goes in the onKey method, which is right here. So when we left off, I wanted to implement the onKey method. So from what I can tell, this is from the name, it's pretty clear that this is what happens when the key is pressed, right? So I'm going to paste code over from the tutorial. It's going to convert that to Kotlin, or it'll try. There's a few errors here, and let's fix that firstly, and then we'll talk about what's going on in the code. So primary code, this is just from the tutorial. It has names for these properties here. So I'm just gonna copy paste those over. This is a switch statement, and let's add, let us import the packages for key event, and that should fix all the issues. This is a switch statement, of course, when. So when the primary code is delete, shift, done, and else. So these are the cases we have. Then this allows you to customize your keyboard's behavior when you press these special keys, right? And let's see what else is left here. So key code cancel, key code delete, key code done, key code mode change, and key code shift. So this is all the stuff that you're allowed to customize, basically, or to listen for. And these are the special keys, and you can customize the behavior of the keyboard within each code block. So this is Kotlin code. I'm not trying to teach you Kotlin per se, but basically, it's saying if it's empty, then we want to delete surrounding text. Otherwise, we commit the text, blank text, to the position where delete was clicked. When shift is clicked, that'll change the keyboard to caps and set the property that we have up here, this one right here. And when we hit done, it's just saying to hit down or enter, you know. This is really customizable. It depends on what you want to do for each of these key events. Otherwise, if it's not the special keys, then input connection that commit text code to string. So this will basically send that character to the input connection. And now I'm going to go ahead and implement the rest of the methods as presented in this tutorial. On press, nothing. On release, nothing. So if we wanted to have different sounds for press down versus release, we could do that over here, for example, or behaviors, animations, etc. And it looks like it's left empty implementations for all the other methods of the interface. Of course, this is all up to you. If you want to implement something on swipe left, say backspace, you could do that. If you want to implement something on swipe right, you can do that. Swipe down. So this is all up to you, how you want to customize your keyboard. Now it's time to test this guy out, and I'm going to run this on my emulator so y'all can see. Whoopsie. And immediately we have a problem here. Once I remember it. And I am a developer, so you know what I'm gonna do. So this problem occurs because the version of Java on my MacBook does not match with the version of Java that the app requires to run. And we can fix this by going to Preferences, Build, Build Tools, Gradle. Okay. Find it in here. So this one here, all we need to do is, it says that Android 11 is required, and then we can see that that has actually been installed here. We can just change that to 11, and okay, that should fix it. Let's try that again, and we're building. I'll see y'all when this is done. More issues, more issues. Purple 200, not found. Okay. So we're seeing there's a lot of... Okay. Looks like I should have probably kept this as such. What I'm going to do instead is create a new color and use that little trick we learned earlier. This is going to be purple 200, like so. And see if that fixes the issues. Alright, let's see when this, it's finishing, it's installed, and there we go. So this is our app. We don't have any views, but we have a keyboard, right? In a real world, you might have like customization options here, in your actual app layout. But let's see how we can actually use this keyboard. So let's go to settings here. Widgets and input over here. On-screen keyboard. Manage on-screen keyboards. I'll be back. This tutorial is very incomplete. So we do need to do one more thing before we're ready to use this. We need to update the manifest, which is something that I figured we needed to do, but I wouldn't have known that we need to do that if I wasn't an Android developer. So Android Authority, bad tutorial, fix your shit. I'm going to copy paste this over. So the manifest is basically where you declare things that the Android system needs to know about your app. If you needed to use internet, if you needed to use location, if you needed to use those kinds of things, you would declare it in the manifest. There's different areas where you declare different types of permissions. This portion here is saying that we have an activity called main activity that is the that is exported, meaning it's visible on the Android application list. And this is saying that for this application, the main activity is the main launcher app. So this came with the app when it was created by the startup wizard. And we're going to add our my input method service into the manifest so that the Android system is aware of our keyboard, basically. And you can see there is some additional setup here that, okay, so this is saying whether it should be visible to others. We're going to set that to true also. And basically this is going to expose my input method service as something that the Android system can access and expose to other apps. By the way, I got this block of code from a Stack Overflow answer that I will also link in the description, but again, this was completely missing from the Android Authority tutorial, so do better. Okay, so we have this in here, and of course the metadata is going to refer back to that method XML that we were looking at earlier, and it says that it's a keyboard. Cool. Let's play that on our emulator and see what happens. Okay, so we have the app that's the same as before, and now when we come in here, theoretically there should be another one. Keyboard display name, there we go. But sure. More warnings, and that's set. Okay, let's see over here. And select our keyboard, and there it is. It is hideous, but we have a crash. Let's see why that's happening. I'm just going to clear this logcat out real quick and see why we're crashing. Uh-oh. Let's see. Integer cannot be cast to character, so this is a problem in the code. Yep. Alright, well, I'm not gonna fix that code. That's up to you. You gotta figure out what's happening here. Clearly this is a cast that does not work. you probably have to, instead of this, I mean, I feel like that actually might be pretty simple. Do it like a two car. Okay. Let's try that actually. Yeah, probably just fix that, but let's find out. Okay. Go back down here. I haven't set this as the default yet, so that's why I need to pick this every time. And there we go. There we go. So obviously a lot of stuff broken, a lot of stuff missing, very ugly, but it's up to you now. Take this and fly. I'm gonna put this on GitHub, and I hope this gets you started on building a beautiful custom keyboard for Android, because you can't do it on iOS. And let me stop right there. Until next time, this is me signing off. I don't have a sign off. Bye.